Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. Has anybody here ever been in the Navy? My father-in-law was in the Navy. He taught me a lot of things about Navy, naval terms, some of the goofy things they used to do. But more importantly, he told me about this special workshop he had to go attend to learn to be a steam fitter. Now, how he went from steam fitter to being a bowling alley manager for the rest of his life, I don't exactly understand. But nevertheless, there was this training program we used to have for World War II, and they put these people through these programs and teach them to be different things. So he was telling me one day about this particular group of new recruits that came on board his ship. And he was on a freighter. He was actually serving in the Merchant Marines, but he called it the Navy. The Merchant Marines. And there was a whole group of new guys that came in. And they said, well, where do we go now? What do we do now? So they sent the bosun's mate up. And the first guy, he said, what do you do? The first guy said, well, I was trained to be a plumber. He says, okay, fine, go to deck 3, 4, over here, go there. What do you do? Well, I was trained to be a carpenter. Oh, okay, well, you go up to the 3rd deck and here and left. So what do you do? Went around this group of people, it was about 12, 14 guys. And each one of them had a specific thing that they'd been trained to do. And they came to the last guy on the road, and he says, well, what would you train to do? He says, I'm a cushmaker. I says, well, we've never had one of those before. What is that? He said, well, I'm a cushmaker. He said, well, I don't know exactly where to sign you. What do you need? Where do you work? How, what kind of? He said, well, I need to work down in a hold, so you'll have to give me a space down a hold. He said, okay. So they go down into the bows of the ship, and they find this great, great big room, huge room. He says, he looks around. Yes, this is good enough. This will work. He said, okay, well, you get to work now? He said, yes, but first I need some materials. He started spelling out this list of detailed materials he needed. Pipes, wires, plumbing. He did lumber. He had all kinds of nails and bolts, specific kinds of hammers and wrenches. All of these things. And the list was as long as your arm. I mean, he was out there just crazy with all this list of stuff. And these people kept bringing the stuff in and bringing the stuff in and bringing the stuff in. And after a while, he had this pile of materials that's all ready to go. He says, okay, now, I'm going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. And the bosun mate said, weeks? Well, it might even take a month. A month? Well, that's what I do. Well, okay. So he goes out. He says, just make sure that I get my breakfast, lunch, and dinner brought in. Lock the door. Let me do my work. And when it's all finished, then we'll have you come in. He said, okay. So by now, the captain has heard about this. So he comes down and he taps on the door. The guy's yelling, so who's there? He said, the captain of the ship. He said, well, I'm sorry, sir. I'm busy right now. I can't let you in until I'm done. He said, I'm the captain of the ship. I deserve to come in. He said, well, I'm sorry, sir, but I'm a cushmaker, and I've got to stay right here and get this done. So the captain goes back up to his first mate, and he says, what exactly did you take down there? So he showed them this huge list of information and directions and supplies that they took down to him. Very specific on what kind of food he wanted for breakfast. It takes a lot of energy. He had to have exactly the right kind of food. For lunch, exactly the right kind of food for lunch. It was an unbelievable list of things. And the captain says, I can't believe we're doing this. He said, yeah, and he just slipped a note under the table and says, we need a 500-gallon steel tank. He said, we don't have one of those on board the ship. So they had to pull into a port and get this thing and bring it on board, open up the hatch and drop it down there for this guy. So he's working. He closed the thing back up and he kept on working. And all day and all night, practically, you could hear these sounds, sawing and hammering and tapping and all these manufacturing type sounds coming from down in the bowels of the ship. By now, everybody on board the ship was watching with great anticipation the special day when it's supposed to be open. And the bosun mate would tap on the door every day when he brought the food in for him. He said, well, you've done, well, 4 more days, 4 more days, 4 more days. And knock on the door. 2 more days, 2 more days, 2 more days. Okay. So he keeps on going, he keeps on working. And meanwhile, part of the people who had places to sleep along the sides of the hold, they couldn't sleep because all the pounding that was going on and the hammering and all this noise. They just couldn't understand this. Why is this guy doing this? So after everything was finally done and the end of the project was about to be done, bosun knocked on the door and he says, okay, today is the day. He said, I'll be done. 2 more hours. I'm sorry, just 2 more hours. So he looks at his watch and he walks away and he comes back in. He says, okay, 2 more hours. So he waits 2 more hours. Taps on it and says, okay, you're 2 hours up. 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. I need 5 more minutes. So finally, the noise stopped. There was no more sawing. There's no more hammering. There's no more banging of things with the pipe wrench and the hammers and all these things. It was absolutely dead silence. And by now, the whole ship was listening very carefully. It's stopped. It's done. It's finished. So the bosun said, well, okay, can we go in? And I said, yeah, sure. So he opens the door, locks the door, and he walks in. And inside this thing, he had built this magnificent, huge thing. And he said, well, what does it do? What are you going to show us what it is or how it works? I mean, how do you turn it on and so forth? He said, yes, no problem. So take the cover off the hold. So they took the cover off the hold. He says, do you have a great big yard arm that you can swing over here with a little crane on it? He says, sure. So they get this thing, they put a great big cable around it to lift the thing up, way up, and they start to pull it very slowly, pull it up out of the hole. Now, by now, everybody on the ship is standing around, looking at this thing. It's emerging. It's coming right up out of the ship, right up out of the ship. And here it is, this gigantic thing. And the guy walks over and he says, okay, now. They swing it over out off of the deck, out over the water. He goes up, he says, well, when's it going to do what it needs? He says, it's ready right now. He goes over and he picks up this great big fire axe. He goes over to the cable, is holding the thing out over the water. And he leans back and goes, shop! Real loud on this thing. And the cable snaps. And it goes right into the water. It goes, cush! Madam Toastmaster.